Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
Hackers recently impersonated Representative John Moolenaar in a phishing email aimed at federal systems. The attack exposed how emotional manipulation and outdated protections continue to undermine cybersecurity. Yejin Zhang, Vice President of Government Affairs at Abnormal AI, joins us now to explain what needs to change. Ms. Zhang, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Terry. So happy to be here.
Let's begin by refreshing our listeners' memory, and ours as well, about this recent email attack that involved Representative Moolenaar. Fill us in on some of the details and why that incident sparked so much interest.
Well, Representative Moolenaar, I think, was impersonated by, I believe, what is now well-known APT 41 actors. There was an email sent to several trade groups, law firms, what have you, during the time that trade talks with China were set to begin. This was kind of concerning because he's a well-known name. People recognize that name. They will likely know why he's reaching out. But the important thing is that it wasn't him. It was an attempt to get information during a critical time. And I think with AI, these types of incidents will be more frequent and more sophisticated.
So the event at the time this was going on was U.S.-China trade talks, and Representative Moolenaar was going to be a key leader in those talks. What was it about the message itself that could have launched malware, something like that?
Yes, there was a draft proposal attached to the message, I believe, that was soliciting input from the recipients. And, of course, that invites everybody likes to think that they have something very smart to offer, and that invites feedback and very close, maybe sometimes even personal input on what they think should happen. And it was a way for those actors to gain insight into the process, into the deeper levels of thinking of what was going on.
So you've said that email really is still the front door to federal systems. Why would you say that the door hasn't been better protected at this point?
That's a really good question. Can you, or even the audience, imagine an organization operating without email? If you don't have email, are you even a legitimate organization? The government is unique in that its entire mission and reason for existence is engagement with the public. Its front doors have to remain open. One of those ways that we do that in the digital age is through email. How would the government operate without email or some way to communicate with its constituents, the public that it aims to serve? That door has to remain open, and it's for that reason that bad actors, knowing this, can continue to manipulate email as a threat vector.
Well, you touched on this a bit ago as you were describing the event, but this attack wasn't just technical. It had an emotional appeal to it, right?
Yes, and having worked at OMB, and many in your audience will probably know, too, that there are, and in almost in every organization, we don't always keep our communication limited to the accounts offered by our workplace, our agency. That we text each other, we call each other, and we email each other things that are off of enterprise accounts. There are reasons for that. It's more obvious in the government side. There are things that we may want to keep private, and that's why we take it off of the enterprise. And to the recipient, it feels almost flattering to receive a personal email from a political official, secretary of this, that, or the other thing, because they want your personal opinion about what's going on.
So how should agencies be preparing their people for that kind of manipulation?
Every cybersecurity and phishing training that you get will almost always tell you to slow down and examine, who is it being sent from, what email address are they using. And that's true. We do have to do that. We have to examine very closely the things that land in our inbox. I think this is a place for AI, though, because to examine every single email with that level of scrutiny is just untenable at the pace at which we work. Abnormal AI has built a business off of this, and we've been running for almost a decade, even before all of this AI craze kind of, came to the top. But in short, we do have to examine those kinds of semi-suspicious emails. And in lieu of doing that for every single email, I think this is where AI can really help.
I'm speaking with Yejin Zhang. She's the Vice President of Government Affairs at Abnormal AI. So let's come back to this policy. The main federal email security policy hasn't been updated since 2018. So what should change there, and who should be leading that effort?
I think it has to be a group effort, but of course, the BOD 1801, it mentions three main ways to protect email: SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Those are things that we still have to do. But in the age of AI, it seems a little bit outdated at a minimum. That policy does not reflect the capabilities and the technology that exists today. And this is true of many policies, especially in the technology arena. It would be good for the government, OMB, CISA, and others included, to examine their policies to see where AI or other technologies can provide a lift. Policy does not move at the speed of technology. That I'm not saying or suggesting that everything should be changed or updated, but where there are capabilities that should be and could be utilized to enhance security, I think those policies, like BOD 1801, deserve a second look.
Well, absent an updated policy, other agencies are experiencing these kinds of events. For example, earlier this year, the State Department had to respond to some emails that had a voice impersonation, I think, of Secretary Rubio. So, again, without an update to the policy, what should agencies be doing right now to stop or derail these kinds of impersonation attacks and make sure that their folks know to look for them and respond appropriately?
Training, as I've mentioned before, is an important aspect of everyone remaining vigilant against cyber attacks. That training will not go away. There is a level of, baseline understanding that everyone needs in order to keep yourself and the enterprise and the agency secure. However, there are limits to what humans can do. In this age where technology and capabilities exist to help, I think we need to start embracing those technologies. I think we need to, at least at a minimum, examine where those technologies can help us do better at our job so that we can focus on the mission and delivering business results.
Folks right now seem more comfortable taking their official conversations off official channels. We've heard about the Signal, incident earlier this year with DOD, and the Molinar message was off official channels. Should we just be telling people that you got to stay inside the network?
In government, absolutely not. In government, emails and other communications are public records. There is a reason why we want to keep them in official channels. There is a public interest here. There are other reasons, like we've mentioned, like the security protections that are available at the agency or enterprise level. Those are good reasons to keep email and other communications on official channels, and we should do that. We should absolutely do that, but it is time to look at ways we can enhance the security of what's going back and forth digitally.
So what are your recommendations for policymakers right now?
Right now, as I've mentioned, BOD 1801 might warrant a second look. It doesn't reflect all of the things that AI and other technologies can do. Agencies, especially in this time, would serve themselves well by examining what AI and other technologies can do for them. What efficiencies can be gained? How can it help them do their jobs better and deliver for the American people? Policies that are somewhat outdated, that touch on technological capabilities and defenses, warrant another look. It hasn't been that long since the federal government put out M2209, the Zero Trust Strategy. Should we look at that again, even though it's only been a few years, to see where new technologies could provide uplift?
Any concern in those recommendations about violations of individual privacy? If you're using AI to pre-scan emails, for example, does that open a privacy concern?
email is a public record. Government officials who are sending messages back and forth about agency business or, comments, these are all public records. They belong to the American public. It doesn't belong to any one person or the agency even, but it belongs to all of us. We would be served well by making sure that the authenticity of those messages are, examined and verified.
Been speaking with Yejin Jang. She's a vice president at government affairs at Abnormal AI. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Terry.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.